Davante Adams has requested a trade, and it is dominating the airwaves. Me and Chris Carter, Locked On NFL, going to discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Good morning and welcome to the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I'm the host of the Locked On NFL show, The Barber, Tony Wiggins, joined today on Thursday by Locked On NFL expert Chris Carter. On today's show now, we're going to dominate this with talking about Davante Adams, but we got some other goodies for you. We're going to tie all this together. A wild game I expect tonight between what might be the two best teams in the NFC South on Thursday Night Football. We'll preview that. In the middle of the show, we're going to talk about why the MVP runs through Baltimore, in my opinion, at this stage of the season. They don't really need Davante Adams. And then touch on Tua Tagovailoa also and everything that's going on with the Miami Dolphins. We're going to start at the very top, though, with trade rumors about Davante Adams and what his possible destination might be. We appreciate you making us your first listen of the day and for being an everyday here on Locked On NFL, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to tune in again in the morning on Locked On NFL for the madman Tyler Rowland for more NFL coverage. Today's episode and all of our Thursday episodes around the Locked On Podcast Network is brought to you by Prize Picks. That's right. Crossover Thursday and this show today is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. My man, Chris Carter, the counselor. Man, there's a lot of stuff going on. Your team is involved in it. Come on, tell me why Davante Adams need to be coming to Pittsburgh, bro.
He don't need to be. I'm gonna keep it 100 with you, like I kept it 100 with everybody for 9 months. I told y'all that, or I guess 6 months. I'm exaggerating there. For 6 months, I told people they are not going to get Brandon Ayuk. You know, they're gonna put in an offer. It's gonna be a low ball offer. They're gonna wait it out. The Niners are gonna be like, hey, it's gonna come down to, does Brandon Ayuk really not want to play for us that bad that we're gonna take this low ball offer from Omar Khan? It didn't come down to that. He stayed. I think that the Steelers are going to have a similar approach over on Davante Adams, and there's going to be plenty of other suitors who want to spend a bit more. And it came out earlier this morning, according to Ian Rappaport and other sources, that Davante Adams wants to play for the Jets, reuniting with Aaron Rodgers. I think that makes a lot more sense because that's a team that's in the position to sell out to win now. The Steelers have some older players, but they also have a lot of younger players that they're building a nucleus for the future. And whoever gets Davante Adams with the money that's tied to him, granted, not all of it would immediately become, whoever's trading for him is going to have to renegotiate a new contract anyways. But whoever gets him, they're going to need to be able to strike right away, because that's going to impact, one, you're going to be giving up trade capital, two, you're going to be or draft capital, then two, you're going to be spending decent salary cap. And whenever you're doing that, unless you're a team that you don't got somebody coming down the line that, some rookie deals that are ended up that you need to pay big players for, like the Steelers, they got George Pickens to pay very soon. They got to redo TJ Watt. So I tell people all the time, like, hey, if it works out, like the Steelers are definitely fielding the phone call, but they're not trying to jump to the front of the line. They're gonna lowball this, just like they did the Brandon Ayuk situation. If it doesn't happen, they'll be like, "Hey, we're still first in division right now. We don't need to try and make some aggressive play."
Right. So we're gonna revisit this while we tap into all of our topics for today at various points. But I want you to hear Peacock and Williamson, and then after that, we'll play a clip from Ross Jackson on why he believes the Saints should make that move. But first, Peacock and Williamson discuss this trade.
All right, here we go. Trade season happened a little early. I mean, we'll see what trades end up happening, Matt, but kind of something that seemed like could be a possibility this year is already coming out after 4 weeks of the season. Davante Adams is requesting a trade from the Las Vegas Raiders. Seems like the Las Vegas Raiders are amenable to maybe facilitating that trade. And so there's a lot of angles with this one, Matt, and there's a couple angles. Well, first, let's go to the reporting. Adam Schefter, sources to ESPN say Raiders have informed other teams they would consider trading wide receiver Davante Adams for a package that would include a second-round pick and additional compensation. So we're a second-rounder plus. So teams don't have to drop a first-rounder. This is still a guy who's considered one of the top wide receivers in the NFL. And Davante Adams has told the team
32 years old.
Yeah, 32. He prefers to be traded.
Yeah, so we see what's going on here. I don't blame Davante Adams. I just think sometimes you got to be careful what you ask for. And teams will do their due diligence, but sometimes this stuff comes down to a team building issue as well, and who you are as a franchise. Like I say, we'll tap into that all day here. But I'm going to play something real quick for you. Ross Jackson says why they should. And I really want you to hear this one, because I don't know if Pittsburgh and the Saints are in the same situation, but you two have a different opinion of it a little bit. I want you to check this out.
Davante Adams' two highest ranked places that he would like to go are the New York Jets and the New Orleans Saints. Why? The New Orleans Saints have Derrick Carr under center, his former collegiate quarterback at Fresno State, and was the reason that he wanted to be traded from Green Bay to Las Vegas. He got his opportunity to get 1 year with Derrick Carr, and it was a good year. Over 1,500 receiving yards, 100 receptions, led the NFL with 14 receiving touchdowns. They put in work. On top of that, they also have maybe a little bit of a hidden kind of X factor in this situation. Davante Adams and New Orleans Saints wide receiver coach Keith Williams, very close. They've worked together for a long time, not just when they were at Fresno State, but he has continued to work with Davante Adams. Keith Williams has throughout Davante Adams' career. So should the Saints be interested? Yes. Is Davante Adams interested? It sounds like. Now, can the New Orleans Saints get it done becomes the next question.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and the reason why I played those clips back to back is, so you see the difference of opinions, right? So there's no connection. Should teams really, in your opinion, focus on what's best for them, or should they pay attention to the familiarity aspect when they try to bring in these players?
I think it's always unique to every team and what they're trying to do. You know, like, for example, I think the Saints are in a similar position. You have an older quarterback, you have Alvin Kamara, you have a bunch of guys on your team that you kind of want to win sooner rather than later with this nucleus. I think the Jets are in a similar situation with that. Like they put so much in to get Aaron Rodgers. They need to win right now. If they don't win right now, Robert Saleh is going to get fired. They're going to rebuild, tear everything down anyways. There's some people already saying that they should just do that because it's not going to work out right now anyway. So it's different philosophies for different teams, different organizations, and where they're at. And again, look, Davante Adams, I think everyone's looking at what he's done in the NFL, and they're like, hey, if you put that with, the quarterback that's on this roster over here, they become elite contenders. And we know how, wide receiver play can really help an offense. But again, to me, I always look at it like, hey, what is the impact on this long term? What is this going to stop you from being able to do? And sometimes it works. Yep. Like everyone will point to the Los Angeles Rams. They signed and traded for a bunch of guys. They gave up draft capital all over the place, and they got their Super Bowl. But now you're starting to see the repercussions of doing it that way versus, a team like the Chiefs that they'll make some moves here and there. But when you get your quarterback, you can just develop naturally, and you can draft guys. You can get your Trent McDuffies, and you can get your Creed Humphreys, and you can develop guys on your roster, and that's how you want to play. That's what the Steelers want to stick to. That's why the Steelers are going to like, hey, we'll lowball your offer here. We're not going to offer all this draft capital, but this is what we can do here. So I feel like the Adams situation is just more of that. And for a much older guy like Brandon Ayuk's, not as good as Davante Adams, but he's also a lot younger. And so I look at this situation the same way. I think someone will make a move because he is too good of a receiver not to, but that team will, I think, have shortened their window of when they need to strike, and it will be all about getting it done this year or next year.
Yeah, and one of the things that I thought of is Green Bay and Pittsburgh are the two teams that are the manufacturers of wide receivers that they find and develop. They don't go out and sign other people's wide receivers. They other people come and sign all of their wide receivers. In the case of Davante Adams, and now Green Bay has 3 or 4 young guys up there that if they can stay healthy, they look good. So it's all about who people are. I'm going to tell you who Baltimore Ravens are. Their team that people have always said don't do a real good job of drafting wide receivers and filling that position for Lamar Jackson. But Kevin Oestreicher thinks they need to strike. They fit into that win now mentality, but I think it might be a little bit of a mistake. And the reason why has something to do with the MVP race. What does that have to do with anything? I'm going to tell you in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Game Time. That's right, man. Now, if you don't know what Game Time is, just think about this. If you need tickets for anything, and you wait till the last minute, even if you don't wait till the last minute, there's no better place to go than Game Time. Why? Because they are the best place for you to get tickets. The lowest price is guaranteed. They'll toggle through the information for you. Once you download the app, you get exactly what you want. You don't have all of this other stuff in your way trying to figure out what it is you need to do. Game Time, they prioritize the curation and the Game Time picks. It makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, monster trucks, whatever. All in pricing, seat views, the lowest price guarantee, and Game Time ticket coverage as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and you redeem code. I'm going to spell it for you. LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? And it is game time. All right, segment number 2 with my man Chris Carter, Locked On NFL and Locked On Steelers, your local expert, giving it to you like nobody else, and he knows this team I'm about to talk about in just a second a lot. I feel like the MVP race at this point, the quarter pole runs through Baltimore, whether it's going to be Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson. You might have a rare situation that they have co-MVP, although Sam Darnold, the way he's playing right, and where he's playing, has a lot to say and do about that. But in terms of Davante Adams, it would seem like it's tailor-made because people have been saying that there are no receivers and they have done a poor job of giving Lamar Jackson legitimate receivers. Kevin Oestreicher agrees with that. Before we get to Kevin, though, are they the one team, Chris, that they do fall into that category of win now, but it would be really understanding if they give up maybe a late second round pick and maybe something else to go ahead and make this move? It looked like it took Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson all of 2 weeks to really get in the sync. Would that be changes if they add Davante Adams?
I think if you want to, if you're the Ravens, you want to strike now and go and go do that. You know, that I think that's an interesting choice. Lamar Jackson is a quarterback who I think has never had that pure superstar dude to throw to. And you know, Mark Andrews is a good tight end. You know, Zay Flowers, I think, can be a really good, you know, route runner, and he's a second-year player and he's developing. You give him Davante Adams, I think the Ravens kind of make sense for that because, you know, if you can make that work financially, if you can make that work with your draft capital, the Ravens could be in a strike now situation where it's like, hey, we've been knocking on the door for years. Lamar's a 2-time MVP. He might be a 3-time MVP by the end of this season. And you look at how things are structured. You do not want to fall short again this year. If you even losing in the AFC Championship would be disappointing. And if you think that can get you over the hump, I could see that being a factor certainly in that decision making.
Listen what KO has to say about it, and then we'll get back to this MVP talk in just a second.
The talent's still there. He's still a stud number 1 receiver. You know, no one should be questioning Davante Adams and what he brings to the table in terms of on-field production. He would instantly, if you're talking about from a Ravens perspective, instantly boost this offense, instantly become that wide receiver 1. And man, let me tell you, a trio of Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and Davante Adams all in Baltimore would just be like just chef's kiss. It would be incredible.
Speaking of a chef, I call this grocery shopping with with an empty stomach. That means you go to the deli, you get everything that you can eat in the car, and you won't have anything for your pantry. You got to make sure that you don't, you can't shop with your belly, man. You got to shop with your head, and you got to get things that's going to be there for the long haul. But I do get the point that when you're this close, and the Chiefs look like they're a little bit vulnerable, just a little bit, and you think the Ravens only needed one more play to get to the Super Bowl, maybe Adams is the guy to give them that one more play.
And that's where I'm at. Like, look, you've been close. Now, granted, Derrick Henry could be that guy because that's kind of why they went and got him, and he certainly made some plays against the Bills in that game on Sunday night. But I think that if the Ravens feel like they cannot sell the farm and get this guy, that would make sense. But again, does Davante Adams want to be there? Does he want to go to a place where he played with a former quarterback? But if I'm Davante Adams, I have to really, I'm comparing it to those two situations we talked about earlier, the Jets with Rodgers or the Saints with Carr. Do I value playing with two guys I used to play with, or do I value playing with a two-time MVP on a team that's been knocking on the door of being Super Bowl champs and being part of that journey and being my legacy being like, hey, I was the player that got that organization over the top for their third Super Bowl. If it was me, I'd be saying, yeah, get me to Baltimore. But there's always a lot of factors that are behind the scenes from front office people that change the entire situation. So it's one of those situations that you wait back and see. If you're watching or listening to this and you follow me for my local coverage of Pitt and Pittsburgh Steelers and everything in Pittsburgh, you follow me on Twitter, you know about my meme. I do this all the time because I started doing this because of the way Brandon Ayuk was being covered. And I would talk about Brandon Ayuk like when news popped up about him, but I would not talk about it every day. But after a while, it was just every day for months. It was Steelers and Brandon Ayuk. I heard that this could be happening. I heard that this could be happening. I heard it's at the finish line. I heard it's at the goal line. I heard it's there. I heard it's there. And so I just posted the video of Mr. Krabs, what he keeps saying, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And it's just incessant. And listen, it's part of sports talk. We got to do this as because, like you said, it's the hot story, and it would be irresponsible for us to not talk about it on our show to address it. But at a certain point, if there's nothing new to really talk about, it's okay to move on and do other stuff. Like this week, I addressed it when it was put out there, hey, he's definitely wants to trade, and the Steelers are in the mix. Did that for Wednesday. I did not do that for cross. I did not even say the words Davante Adams in my crossover Thursday episode, nor do I plan to do so in my Friday episode unless it's as a joke. So it's just, I think that sometimes we get a little caught up in doing this over and over and over again. Yep. But but I get it because the prospect of getting an exciting player like that is always interesting.
Yep. And as soon as you don't get him, the fans will go, "Oh, we ain't need him anyway." That's the way it works. I talk about need now. Miami needs some quarterback play that is at least competent, and they don't have it right now. I blame them for that because they have to really. There was ways you could address the quarterback situation. Every team, when they lose their starter, is going to take a step back. But Miami didn't just take a step back. Miami took a whole decade back. Miami looks like they ain't even anywhere near being a competent football team. Listen to what Kyle Krabs had to say about Tua Tagovailoa and the prospects of him coming back at the end of that clip. And that's what we'll talk about once we hear from Kyle.
Mike McDaniel said on Tuesday that it's not quite as simple as doing something different. This roller coaster is going to keep on chugging along. And we are in the midst of the big drop. At the start of the roller coaster is what it feels like. And how long the drop continues is to be determined. Now, there's been some assertion from NFL insiders like Adam Schefter during the kind of build up to week 4, suggesting that Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins starting quarterback, may be in a position. He's not experiencing any symptoms of the concussion that he suffered in week 2 against Buffalo, may be in a position to be back in week 8 against Arizona when he's eligible to come off injured reserve. We'll see. It seems like everybody has something different about this situation because of the ambiguous nature of head injuries. And the broadcast certainly spent a lot of time on Monday night talking about Tua Tagovailoa. And I frankly am over that element of this situation. The Dolphins as a team are in the situation that they're in.
Listen, I hope that we don't lose the consciousness of the seriousness of Tua's injury and start trying to make decisions, or he doesn't sit there and watch how bad it is for them without him, and he uses that to make a decision on his future. I don't think it should have anything to do with it. How they look shouldn't have any bearing on what he decides to do with his future.
And Tony, remember, it's not just this injury; it's the injury history of Tua that is scary. He's had several concussions now, from college to pros, and other injuries, and it's just like that is where, if you're just a human being, that's what you're looking at right now, and you're like, man, it's all right if that dude just protects himself from now on. It just says, hey, you know what, we gave it a shot. That's where I'm at, man. I look at this and I think, this is a situation where, I'm scared for the human being that is Tua Tagovailoa. And it's crazy. I'm watching that game when that hit happened. I see it's Damar Hamlin, and he goes down, and immediately I'm like, that's a concussion. Like I there's no questions in my mind. Like this dude's hurt again, and and even beyond the threat of right now, concussions have longer lasting effects, and we know this is because of that. Heck, I'm in Pittsburgh. It's where the initial studies were done on Mike Webster on how it ruined his life. So that's my concern. The Dolphins should be fully concerned with that. Tua should be fully concerned with that. As far as the Dolphins and how they're set up to win right now, I think that you can see it's not working right now. It's a tough spot to be in when you build your franchise around one dude, and that one dude is getting hurt. And even when he wasn't getting hurt, he wasn't lighting it up the way you wanted it to. I think the Dolphins are in a peculiar situation, and it's not going to be an easy hill. It's not going to be an easy hole to climb up out of.
It sure won't be. Some teams have climbed out of some holes very impressively early in this season. There's some teams that are digging themselves in a hole. I cover one of them. We use the Davante Adams situation to tell you why teams should try to be like the Washington Commanders. We'll do that when we come back, and then a Thursday night football preview that I think is going to be a barn burner. We'll discuss all of that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. It is all about FanDuel right now, man. That's right. FanDuel is the place to be, and it is America's #1 sports book. If that ain't enough, I'm going to tell you, man, you can get off to a big start this season and get a big return on FanDuel, because they got some new little things for you, and I'm going to tell you what it is. First of all, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you placed your first $5 bet. I'll get back to that in just a second. But now when you're watching the game and you're on the page where your bets are, you don't have to refresh and go to another page. You can sit there right now in the middle of the game, and you can check out all the latest stats, view live, play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you make your bets. That means you can also watch your fantasy, and you can watch to see if your money's coming in. And remember, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. That'll be guaranteed whether you win that bet or not. Just place your first ever $5 bet and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is FanDuel.com. Go ahead and go over there and download and play along with America's #1 sportsbook. Segment number 3 here on Locked On NFL, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Talk about team building. I told everybody I was going to mention team building. How can we tie team building into the story of the day, which we've talked about ad nauseum, both on Locked On NFL this morning as well as here at the barbershop? We talked about Davante Adams, and we talked about how everyone says, let's grab that low-hanging fruit. Well, there's somebody that says, let's not. And if you don't listen to anybody else, you need to listen to a guy who had one of the worst teams in the league last year. And then we'll change that into this. Out of all the bad teams out there, like Carolina, Jacksonville, and any other one that Chris Carter can think of, Chris, I want you to tell me after here, David Harrison, who has, if you were a coach, which place would you want to go next season? And maybe you could start off just like Washington.
Las Vegas Raiders star wide receiver Davante Adams wants a trade. Why doesn't it make sense potentially? Well, there's an incredible amount of draft capital the Las Vegas Raiders are going to be looking for. And when you're talking about a team in the Washington Commanders and a general manager, Adam Peters, who obviously clearly he's stated it, he's displayed it, does not want to, he wants to build through the NFL draft, or you're talking about trading for a guy who is not going to be around for very long. The rework of the contract, could it include guaranteed money down the road? The Commanders didn't really want to tie themselves to a guy like Brandon Ayuk for a lot of money down the road. And then you've got egos. Terry McLaurin has been the number one receiver in Washington for quite a while now. Is he going to accept being the number two behind Davante Adams? Like, a lot of people would look at Davante Adams and say, okay, well, now you're the number one, Terry's the number two, and he's a really good number two. If the Commanders take the stance that Terry is still number one and Davante is the number two, how's Davante Adams going to feel about that? And does it simply, as we're even having this conversation, does it just complicate things too much?
So my point in playing that is this. This is an example of a team that was in football purgatory, changed everything about their organization,
Literally
did everything the right way, right? And now they're being rewarded for it almost in a fast track type of way. And David Harrison is saying, nah, man, we don't need to do that. How can teams get to that point? And then of all these bad teams, which one would you rather take over if you were the hot GM or the hot coach next year?
To me, I'm anyone that listens to me knows that I talk about organizational integrity, and that's something the Commanders didn't have for quite some time. You hear all those stories, the rumors, the truths about Dan Snyder and how crazy that situation was. You didn't want to go there. I know of coaches that actively avoided going there. I look at that, and I look at the Carolina Panthers. We talked about David Tepper a couple weeks ago on this show. I'm not touching that right now. I don't know. It depends on the organization. Why are they bad? Are they bad? Is there an organization that's bad and down and out of it because they're just on the bad end of the cycle? Because there's the natural cycle. Like, right. Most teams, if you're good for a stretch of a decade or more, or you have eventually those players age out. You don't always hit in the low parts of the draft when you're winning and doing well, and then it takes a lot of work and a lot of organizational integrity. To me, if I'm a coach or if I'm a GM and I'm looking to go to the hot place to flip things around, I'm going to the place that's willing to have patience to organize the way to get to the point where the Steelers are at, where the Ravens are at, where the Ravens their fall off was not that drastic when after their Super Bowl crew of the late 2000s into the early 2010s when that fell off, and they were able to luck into Lamar Jackson at the bottom of the first round, and that was a really good pick by them. But at the same time, they've made a lot of other really good moves and really good draft moves, and been a team that can develop these guys. So if you're a team like the Commanders and you're trying to get right. Right. And you're getting right. Like, Jaden Daniels looks really good right now. And you got something going there. And I don't know if it'll last all season, but why would you go stray away from the path that you have tried to reset yourself on for this moment? And again, this is not to say that no team should go get Davante Adams, but you got to be of a particular sort of circumstances. You got to have the quarterback. You got to have the team around him. You got to have the money to do it. You got to have the draft capital to do it. You got to have the willingness to sell that draft capital because you think, hey, now is the time you want to make the move. If this was 4 years ago, I bet you the Rams would do this move. They would say, you know what, get him with Cooper Kupp. Let's get Matt Stafford this ring, or whatever. So I get it, man. I get why it's a thing, but I also think that there are enough people, and I also think him, as Matt Williams pointed out way at the top of the show, him being 32 years old plays a big role in this. So
for me, you mentioned Tepper. I wouldn't touch it. The Jaguars have never won anything, and I think the best bad team to go to is the Patriots, is because they got 6 Super Bowl rings, and that's a lot of cachet to tell people. Just be patient. It will take your time. It took us all this time to get here, and now we're back. Good Thursday night preview. In the barbershop, we love the fact that we bookmark stuff. We don't actually bookmark it. We just remember everything you said. So before the season started, there was an NFC South preview, Boy, these dudes are omniscient. Listen to these cats. You're going to see Ross Jackson for the second time about the South preview, and it'll excite you for this game we have tonight between the Bucs and the Falcons.
Let's get started with the end. Who wins?
I think the Buccaneers win it again. There's no reason that they shouldn't win it again. Everyone talks about, oh, they're just running it back. Well, if any other team in the NFL had signed Mike Evans, Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr., they'd be talked about as offseason champs.
The New Orleans Saints finished in second place last year, and I don't see them finishing in first place this year. So I think I agree with you, James. I think it's going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cleaning up again.
And I'm going to say the thing I said last year on the division preview. Of course, it's going to be the Atlanta Falcons that win the division. Adding Kirk Cousins, obviously, that gives them a lot more stable quarterback play, something that has been sorely missing from this team over the last couple of years. They just picked up a couple of big-time defensive pieces in Matthew Judon and Justin Simmons.
I do like what Atlanta's done, bringing in Kirk Cousins. He's probably the best quarterback in this division.
Now, check this out. 2 people picked the Bucs, and 2 people picked the Falcons. The Falcons already beat the Saints head-to-head. The Bucs are in front of the division. If the Falcons win, they tie the Bucs with the top record, but they own the tiebreaker. So this is a preview. This is a preview of the preview of maybe the NFC South Championship and how that division is going to go.
And you know what? I also think, and to their point, I think these guys brought up some good points about the additions to these teams. But like, both of these teams could actually be really good. Like comparatively in the NFL, like when the Steelers beat the Falcons in week 1, there were a lot of people that are like, oh, you know, the Falcons, maybe they're just not that good. And then they go out and you see how the way they've played these other games. They beat the Eagles. They almost beat the Chiefs. They pull off a close win against the Saints. You know, maybe they are that. Then you look at the Buccaneers, you know, they beat the Commanders. Everyone at first like, you know, who cares? Now the Commanders look kind of good. So that's actually a pretty good win. They beat the Lions in Detroit. That looks like a really good win right now. You lose to the Broncos, that's embarrassing, but then you come back, bounce back, and you control the Eagles. This is a really good showdown. Like, you know, and I think that people have written off the NFC South ever since Tom Brady left. Because, you know, it's been rough. It's been rough. Like, you know, it's been a tough time in this division. You know, it's kind of like, you know, low expectations, but I do think this is a really good matchup. I like both of these teams. I'm really intrigued to see who sets the pace of play and how they do. Baker Mayfield has done some really good things. I think Kirk Cousins can do some really good can do some really some things with the Falcons. I also think it's interesting that Vegas or FanDuel has this as a 1.5 point favorite on the Atlanta Falcons at home there. So I think it's going to be appointment television. If you're a football fan, you better tune in on Thursday night.
You better. It's going to be loud too, and excitement, and a lot of excitement. You will not go to sleep on this one. Trust me. You won't go to sleep on Locked On NFL either. We won't let you because we come at you twice a day, early in the morning. Tyler Rowland, the madman, starts you off with a double shot of espresso and then slide through the barbershop where you are now. You can hang with me, Tony Wiggins, and all of our guests on each of those shows each and every single day here on Locked On NFL, where it's your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Make sure you listen on the Locked On NFL YouTube page, or watch on the Locked On NFL YouTube page, and listen wherever you get your podcast. Counselor, we will see you next Thursday, my brother. Appreciate you. Have a great day up in Pittsburgh, and y'all have a great day wherever you are, and take care of each other, and we'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL.